Good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're excited to have a couple special guests with us. Our topic for our webinar for this month is the birds and the bees of summer maintenance and trees. So any questions that you've ever had about summer maintenance or trees in practical terms or in terms of contract and other legal type of issues, you're going to be able to get those answered today. Please feel free to fire your questions into the chat. John, who's our IT guru and is hosting this for us, is going to fire those over to me, and we are going to be able to get those questions answered for you. So happy to welcome into our podcast studio this week, Jeff Plante. Plante or Plant?
Plant.
Plant, okay. There is an E at the end, but
there is.
Just ignore that. So did your parents decide you are going into landscaping, and you just had the name to fit it, or how did that?
Funny enough, we often joke that we're going to start a company called Plantscape. It's never actually happened. No, I had no intention, even as a kid, of going into landscaping. I actually wanted to go into teaching history of all things, and I did, and then followed up with this as a second career.
Awesome. Fantastic. That's great. What triggered that in my mind is Jerry Seinfeld has a bit about Bozo the Clown. So when your parents name you Bozo, they're kind of laying out what your career path is going to be. But it's kind of cool that you ended up getting into the landscaping industry. So Jeff from Lindsay Landscape, thanks. Nice to have you here. And we have with us GERRY BOURDEAU, management consultant and general condo guru. From Bourdeau Company. So thanks, Jerry, for joining us. We're really happy to have you here as well.
Thank you.
So Jeff, tell us a little bit about you and about Lindsay Landscape.
Well, I've been with Lindsay for about 8 years now, and I've been in the industry for about 11 or 12 years. Lindsay Landscape's been around for more than 20 years now, 20 to 25 years, depending on who you ask. And their primary focus is on condominiums. That's the number one area of focus. And we typically, in a year, we probably provide service to 200, 250 condos all across Ottawa, all the way from Nepean, Barrhaven, Orleans, everywhere.
Right. It's a large chunk of your clientele.
Sure is, yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Good stuff. And Jerry, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Bourdeau Company, which is a new enterprise.
It is. Now, before I say anything, I just want to thank you for inviting a bald man to a studio that is lit from the ceiling. And I hope that viewers don't have to put their sunglasses on right now. I apologize for my...
You're not in that boat alone.
I didn't bring any
Jeff and I are well on our way, so...
Well, hey, I was worried about my hair this morning. Now I'm not so worried.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
I don't worry about my hair.
Also, the 2 hours that we all spent in hair and makeup before we started.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. But to return to your original query, yes, Bourdeau Company, I'm super excited about it. It's a new endeavor that I think is mainly new for the condo industry. The idea behind the company is just a recognition that this industry is becoming more and more complex, and perhaps it's time to start dividing labor out a little more like other professional industries do. So, for example, you wouldn't go to the same doctor to take a look at your heart as you would your foot, more than likely. I mean, you'd get maybe your family doctor to triage that, but when you need the real treatment, you're going to a different person. Similar examples all over the place, right? The same lawyer is probably not defending you in a criminal case as helping you buy a house. And the question arises in condo management, why is the same condo manager helping you to do things that are also very important, like setting up a landscaping contract? But, why is that person expected to have the same skills as a manager that would be handling, let's say, a multi-million-dollar construction defect problem, right? There's not really a lot of overlap in skill in those areas, and it's hard to train for both of those things, and maybe even inefficient to have people doing both of those things. And when I say maybe, I mean it is inefficient. You're taking away time from one project to feed the other. So basically, this firm of mine specializes in those types of complex problems that managers often will not have run into or don't run into them very often, and possibly don't have the time, patience, or in some instances, skill to handle. And then we're happy to do that for condominiums and management service providers.
It's fantastic, and a huge need, and a gap, I think, in the industry that's existed, and I think it's really important. And I can't think of a better person to do it, just from working with you in the past, right? In terms of your body of knowledge, and from the legal standpoint of condos, but general knowledge about the industry as well. So
just I want to make something super clear, a very short period of time here. We don't give legal advice, but we can help you to arrange your file in a way your lawyer will appreciate, right? Like, I think that's where we can really shine.
Excellent.
So,
yeah. No, good point. And thanks for reminding me about that, because I'm pretty sure there's a disclaimer that I'm supposed to make at the beginning of this, but I haven't crafted it yet. But this is not legal advice. I'll just say that, and hopefully that's enough. Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And like I say, a gap in the industry, and wish you all the best. I think you'll do fantastic, and it's going to be a great resource for property management firms and for condo corporations in the city. So
thank you.
Very good. Let's get into talking about landscaping. So we're now heading toward the 1st of April very quickly. Snow is disappearing, except for the stuff that is going to be falling over the weekend, and we'll talk about that in a little while as well. But once that's over with and that's melted, hopefully we'll be in the clear, and people will be thinking a lot about landscaping in general, and landscaping contracts, and property managers making sure they're getting those in place for their properties. And hopefully they've done that already. We always like to have those done much earlier than now, but it also happens that sometimes that doesn't take place or roll out the way we would want it to in the time frame that we want it to. So if we're a property manager and we are still in the process of getting those contracts in place for landscaping and summer maintenance, we're in the right place for this webinar, because we're going to be able to find out some details about the best way to do that. So Jeff, maybe what we can start with is tell us a little bit about some of the major issues or major tasks that condo corporations will need to perform and that need to be part of their contract as we head into that summer maintenance season. What are some of the main aspects of this that you guys take care of?
Well, one of the main things that I think people need to sort of keep in mind is your scope of work. Quite often we find that we get a scope of work that's very generic in nature. It's not very well defined. And the best thing that you could probably do from the contractor's perspective as a property manager is to provide a scope of work that is very detailed, that has been tailored specifically for that condo, and one that allows for really no ambiguity in terms of how the contractor might interpret things. And I think that's a really important point, is that what tends to happen is that when multiple parties are participating on a bid, that they will bid on very different things. And that is a problem, because what it means in the long run is some things will get forgotten, some things might get completely neglected, or the contractor might even ignore some of the things that are in there. So I think that's kind of a good starting point, is to make sure that you have as much detail in there and as much specific information that relates to the condo, because they're all, as you guys know, they're all very, very different. There are no two condos that are the same.
Right.
Yet a lot of property managers will provide a very generic scope of work, a template almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I could see you nodding there, Gerry, with respect to making sure we're comparing apples with apples and oranges with oranges when it comes to that. So what can condo corporations and property managers do to make sure that that happens?
Right. Well, there's a number of things. Firstly, I agree. The more specific your scope, the better, for a number of reasons. It helps the companies price out fairly the job, and so then you know what you're getting. In fact, nobody's guessing. But also, if there are problems later, you're going to have something to refer to prove the intent that everybody had when they were making this contract, right? So I'll set that aside, but it's just another benefit of being clear in your scope. Things that you can do, obviously you can use very clear wording. Make sure you think about how you're describing things. I mean, there's probably multiple names for different things, like what is edging? What is that in your mind, right? So, but other things I think are helpful are a map. I think is extremely helpful to tell people where they're cutting and where they're not. And it's so easy to do these days, even if you don't have a drawn map, because you've got access to an amazing satellite system at the, the tips of your fingers. So, but then there's always the good old fashioned walkthrough, right? Get everybody together and walk through the site. That takes more time, I understand, but that's probably, I think that's my favorite, because then people can ask questions and you can point to things in real time. But I don't know about
And no one does that anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't remember the last time I was asked to go on a walkthrough.
Wow, it's super important. Yeah, and it should be done like well before the start of the season, as early as it can be. And what you mentioned, Gerry, about a map, like you say, it's so easy to do, and that's really all you need is sort of the satellite view of that of the property, and then you're kind of mapping out, or use Paint or whatever little program you're going to use. It really doesn't take long to sort of map out, okay, these are the grass areas that need to be taken care of, these are the locations of the garden beds, and all that stuff. It's and then you have that, and you have it as part of your specifications anytime you need to go.
And I think to be quite clear, the onus for that should be on the property manager. And the reason why I say that is quite oftentimes I will put a map into a quote that is entirely subjective. It's what I want to work on. There might be other things that are sort of glossed over or missed. And by all means, if you're the one providing that map, then that's the map I'm going to have to stick with, as opposed to something that I've more or less guessed at, right? Which could be problematic in itself.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that even more rare is somebody sending you the condo's declaration, right? And saying, hey, can you interpret this and tell me what needs to be cut, right? So I agree, that's the manager's job. Certainly the manager should confer with the board about what the expectations are. And then, it shouldn't be you guys, unless, and I don't know if you're going to get into this, somebody's paying you to develop a plan. It should not be you developing a plan.
Right, absolutely. And the number one place where you see that happening is, I cannot tell you how many times I have to write to property managers and ask, does this include, is this only limited to common areas, or are we including backyards, front yards, the owner's gardens? And the answers that you get it's a full range of things.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing in the scope of work that specifies that. So if I'm the person that's making or putting together the estimate, and I don't have that information and nobody gets back to me on that, I'm just going to define it however I see fit. And that may not line up with what you or the board want. But if you've signed that contract and that's what it says, well, then we could have a potential problem down the road. And there's really no need for that.
No, for sure. And townhomes properties can be particularly problematic with that, more so than a high-rise building, because you'll have front yards, you'll have garden beds in front of many of these townhomes, and almost every property is different in terms of whose responsibility it is to take care of the garden bed. And perhaps it's common element, but it may be exclusive use common element. And even if it is common element, there can be something in the governing documents that indicates it is the owner's responsibility of that unit to care for that particular area, or not. It can be the corporation's responsibility as well, depending on what the governing documents indicate.
And that would be great information to know, because I can't tell you the number of times where we don't actually have that information anywhere.
Right.
And then we spend, maybe 3 months later, 4 months later, we find out, oh no, you're actually responsible for these areas as well. Well, how are they defined? If any one individual at that condo can go and garden there, or cannot go and garden there, then it's not a common element, right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
So a good set of specifications that is complete and accompanied by a map is really ideal. And looking through or reviewing those specifications on an annual basis is a great idea, but especially when the contract's going to go to tender. reviewing it and make sure it does cover everything and that the detail is there so that everybody's bidding on the same thing.
And just to add to that in a different direction, it doesn't really need to cover everything. And by that, I mean, quite often you'll get a set of specifications which include all sorts of turf care jobs, if you will, aerating, fertilizing, garden fertilizing, tree fertilizing, overseeding. You don't, for the most part, not all condos need these services. So sometimes there are things in that scope of work that the board is paying for that they do not necessarily need. And the difficulty is that we don't necessarily want to provide those services, and some of the people that are bidding might not have any intention of offering those services. So it's a good idea to try and reduce the scope of work to maybe a set number of very key elements, like obviously lawn cutting, spring and fall cleanup, gardening if there are gardens. I can't tell you the number of times I see gardens in a quote or something called shrub beds, which is somehow different from flower beds, when there aren't any of these things on site. But if you have to provide a price for that, it could become rather challenging.
Mm-hmm. And so probably what's happened there, at least in a lot of cases, is that sort of a boilerplate contract or set of specifications has just been copied over from one property to another property without actually tailoring it to that particular
That's right.
property.
You'll see things like a swimming pool, and there's no swimming pool. Or you might have extensive gardens that are identified in the scope of work, but there might have been a change at some point in the last 4 or 5 years where the condo has ripped out those gardens and built a retaining wall.
Right.
If you don't account for that, then it gets really confusing, and everybody's doing a lot more work, not only us in terms of our estimate, but you guys in terms of having to answer us, respond, get back and forth, figure out if there really are gardens or a retaining wall, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So making sure everything's covered in those specifications is important, but it sounds like there is a danger of those specifications being too detailed, right? And where the condo corporation's actually including things that they may or may not need in terms of services, or being detailed about how those services should be performed when maybe that's not the best way to do them. We want this kind of fertilizer used in this area. We want aeration done. Well, maybe that's the wrong kind of fertilizer, or maybe you don't need any at all, or maybe you don't need aeration at all.
That's a really good point. We often see a request for specific times for fertilizing. I'm not sure who has assigned those times, early spring, late spring, summer, and fall. Some companies, some boards want 2 visits, some 3, some 4. No one's really sure what the rhyme or reason to that is, or they're asked for very specific requirements within that fertilizer, which even somebody like myself who's a horticulturalist would need to go and look that up and probably read a few scientific studies to get some sense of what the actual difference is. And sometimes you could be talking a difference of $20 to several $1,000s in terms of what they're actually specifying in that requirement. So it could become quite costly for really no apparent reason.
Mm-hmm. And I think this leads us into a really important topic, which can branch out outside of landscaping and summer maintenance and cover relationships with any contractors. But it is viewing our contractors as partners. So the condo corporation viewing the contractor as a partner. And I know, Gerry, this is something that you stress a lot in terms of do your homework, and when you're going out to tender, find a good contractor, make sure they're reliable and that they're trustworthy. And then once you begin working with them, trust them. So can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that, and why that relationship and handling it that way is so effective?
Sure. Well, I mean, let me first say, I understand that money can be tight. And so with the caveat that money is important, what is really important when you're dealing with contractors or just the general care of your property, it's the same as when you're like looking for a dentist, or you're looking for a mechanic, or you're looking for a doctor or something. You're really best off finding someone that you think does a good job, that will know your file and can provide you advice that you trust. Okay. It's more efficient in a number of ways. You won't feel the need to micromanage them. You're going to feel like you are in good hands. But also, I can often tell a difference between condos that frequently switch what company is taking care of the place. They don't look as good. They're not, the pride isn't there. Especially there's an incentive issue here. Not that I'm saying that any company would do this. Obviously, I'm sure you have professional standards, but if you know you're not going to be back next year because of a $50 difference, are you going to go the extra mile to provide advice and care for that property, right? Or are you just going to sort of fulfill your contract? If you want to get good results from people in general, I think you want to deal with them in good faith. And if you think that they are not trustworthy, or that that relationship is not worth the $50 price difference, I mean, what are they doing there to begin with?
Or they're not going to provide you good advice.
Right.
Right. If that's
why are they there to begin with?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that this is true across many fields, like you said, but I don't suggest, having too many cooks in the kitchen on your landscaping. By the way, I wanted to ask if aerating, is that a scam?
My hesitancy says it all. I think there are some places.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I would say in very old condos that have the same lawn for 30 or 40 years, that are kind of run down and everything's compact. Yeah, sure, I could see where you would need aerating.
Okay.
But quite frankly, I think it's largely unnecessary, which is why, as I've been suggesting, we try to get out of some of the more interesting and speculative turf care services. There are certainly places that need all of these services, but there are many that do not need them. Certainly not on a yearly basis necessarily, or several times a year. That I've never really understood.
So my understanding is that aeration is used in areas where soil has become compacted.
That's
and
correct.
as a result of being compacted, is not as good at growing. The soil's lost some of its ability to grow. Is that right?
That's accurate. I mean, more or less, the issue is where the soil has never really, or rather, the grass has never taken off. The soil, like you said, is compact. There's probably been no change to that soil in a number of years. But one of the bigger issues is you'll see condominiums where the level of care is generally not as high as others. And you're wondering to yourself why you're out there aerating when the common lawn is essentially a place for dogs to frolic.
Right.
It's counterproductive, right? I mean, we're aerating for what purpose? So if the board if the board and the people that live there don't have any, not any sense of pride, but if there isn't that level of upkeep that you would expect to see, a budget in place to really show off the property, then it certainly doesn't make sense to have any turf care other than simply lawn cutting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're basically, to use the expression, you're putting lipstick on a pig.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we could also say on that topic that there's nothing wrong with that approach from a board when they've decided that isn't a high priority for the condo corporation, because that reflects the desires and the wishes of the ownership in general, that isn't a high priority to spend a lot of money in that area. Maybe it is in some cases, and that's where ownership really wants that area of the property to look good, and they're willing to make the investment there.
You might have other major costs that eat up your budget that you can't really afford to put in, $500,000 worth of gardens or $500,000 worth of interlock. I get that. That absolutely, we understand that. But there is definitely, by the same token, you really don't need that. Then you can save $400 or $500 by not including aerating. Then by all means do it.
Mhm.
Take that money, put it into something else, like a small garden or a sign at the front of your condo, something else that might reflect, a sort of an upgrade.
Yeah. So maybe not a scam,
Mm.
but it's probably a service that is provided in many cases where it's not a value-added service in any way.
That's
It's
correct.
not accomplishing anything.
Yeah. And to be clear, it's not that the contractor wants to even scam or offer that service, but again, going back to the scope of work, if it's in there, we kind of have to do it, because if we don't do it, Jerry or Mark's going to call us and say, "Hey, you guys haven't aerated this year,"
Yeah.
and
I
we're
just
like, "Oh."
heard so many different opinions about aerating, and I thought, there's a horticulturalist. How often do I have a chance to ask?
Yeah, good, good info, and good question. Yeah, so we were talking about viewing our contractors, summer maintenance contractor in this case, as a partner, and bringing on board, making sure we're bringing on board somebody that we can trust, and then actually trusting them.
Yes,
right?
I think following through on that is key.
Yeah. I think it happens a lot. It happens too much where either property management, but more often a board, will have the plan in place themselves, right? And it could be that they are experienced and they know good things about horticulture or about gardening or whatever it is, and that's great. That's great to have that knowledge, but listen to what our contractor is bringing to the table in terms of advising us, and that's going to help a condo corporation not to be throwing good money after bad.
Absolutely. And just to add to what Jerry was saying earlier, Rome wasn't built in a day. And there is, contractors don't really want to have to rebid everything every year. And there is definitely a learning curve. So if you take a property on in the winter, it's even bigger learning curve. But if you can get there in the summer, it might be a little bit smoother, but there's always going to be a transition. There's always going to be a few hiccups along the way when you're trying to iron out all the parameters. So a 2 or 3 year contract is very beneficial in that sense. I guarantee you, if the first year is rough, it's only going to get better into the second and third year.
Mm-hmm.
After that, maybe you can reevaluate. But I do think things do take time,
Mm-hmm.
and we do need to learn the properties. And again, the bigger the property,
Mm-hmm.
the worse that case actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I've often done is encouraged boards, when they're bringing in a brand new contractor, go ahead and put in place a 1-year contract only. And that encouragement is there because it gives the board a bit of comfort to know that they're not locked in long term. And if there are any big problems with the contractor that come to light, then you've only locked in for that 1 year.
Yeah, we only, for example, we only offer a 1-year contract for first time out if we've never been in the property.
Well, I think there's a difference between communicating to a contractor that in good faith you're doing a 1 year to see if the relationship works. But I think that's different than some of the cyclical, just 1 year, over and over and over again. The results will be very different than if you have somebody like Jeff taking care.
And I can tell you
Absolutely.
something else from experience. If you only sign 1-year contracts and we have to go back to the bidding process every year, your price is ultimately going to be higher, because what we will do typically in that second and third year is we will offer a bit of a discount because we want your business. But if we have to go out to tender every year, and we do have some clients where we've had them for 15, 20 years, and every year it's the same thing. And every year I tell them, your price is not going to be a standard increase set to the CPI. Well, up it goes, 5, 6, 7%, depending. And if you have a bad year by chance, then watch out. You're going to get hit with a much higher price point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like the multi-year contracts, they also really show that both parties are saying, let's work together over a longer period of time. And you were mentioning already how the many ways that that's beneficial, because let's say there are areas of grass that are problematic, and the board says we would like to address that, and we're willing to spend a bit more money in order to do that. That's not going to turn around in one season, right? in most cases.
Absolutely. And also,
multiple seasons.
We do more than just grass cutting. Obviously, we do a lot of softscape and hardscape. So any of those improvements do take time. And what we'll often do is we'll approach a board and approach a property manager and say, look, let's make a 3-year plan, because we all have to be aware of budgets. Well, we know that you guys have budget restraints too. And we have timing restraints. We can't revamp an entire condo in one season, whether that's in terms of time or finances. So what's easier to do is to say, okay, here's a plan, drop a plan over 3, 4, 6 years even. It might not be us in 3 years, but that's fine. But here's a plan that you can use to guide you through those stages to transform the property to bring it up to the level that you want it to be at.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift a little bit because we're kind of we've touched a number of times on contracts, the importance of the specifications section of the contract. One area that we want to talk about is liability and any other important aspects of the contract that we need to make sure are solid in terms of wording to make sure everybody's protected in a reasonable way. Every contractor ideally wants the contract to protect them really, really well. And every client and every condo corporation typically wants the contract to cover them and protect them really, really well. And the reality is that if we're going to have a contract that's successful, it needs to protect both parties in a reasonable way. But if one party is overprotected, that means the other party typically is underprotected. So there is a balance that needs to be reached there. So maybe, Gerry, you can talk a little bit about liability issues. We're talking specifically about summer maintenance, and we'll talk when we get to the fall. We're going to talk more about winter maintenance, where that comes into play a lot more. But what would you like to mention about when it comes to liability issues or any other important clauses or aspects?
Sure. Well, I mean, a few things. By the way, I like how you deftly swept aside the winter stuff, which obviously Jeff and I would be having a much more robust conversation about liability.
Absolutely.
And we will get there.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. But regardless, I mean, a lot of the same principles apply, even though the risk is lower in a summer landscaping contract of something getting damaged severely or someone getting injured. I like what you're saying about the reasonableness of the indemnities in the contract, right? So, yes, everybody would love it if somebody else was to blame for everything, but that's kind of unreasonable and, might even be unconscionable depending on how the contract's written. The most common and I think fair way to do a landscaping contract is to leave the landscaper responsible for the effects of their work and for carrying out their work, and leave the condo responsible for anything the condo is really supposed to do. Like, it's not, for example, the landscaper's fault if somebody falls into a pothole, unless the landscaper created the pothole, right? So you want to make it clear the landscaper's not going to get sued because the condo failed to fill a pothole, and vice versa. Part of this goes to something else you were saying about the scope of work. The scope of work shouldn't include things like, we demand that 3 riding mowers will be used. They must be ridden in tandem by somebody with at least 3 years experience. And we want mid-grade unleaded fuel. And now I'm just controlling. I guess that'd be wrong anyway. But now we're just really controlling. We're telling them what to do. And if something bad happens because they're following our instructions, I mean, they're going to start to blame the manager or the condo or both, right? And so you want to acknowledge that you're dealing with a professional firm, and the contract should be fair in the way that it assigns liability. And then otherwise, it should just be very clear about what was offered, what was accepted, what is the consideration, right? So clear scope of work, how much are you paying for it, when are you paying for it? And, the better all of these things are, I mean, away you go, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's so crucial, and it's an aspect of the contract that doesn't get looked at until something happens.
Yeah.
Right. And so often those areas of the contract will not be looked at, especially when it comes to summer maintenance. Winter maintenance, for obvious reasons,
scrutinized.
And are more commonly looked at and needed. But in the areas of summer maintenance, it's not so common.
And there's a few things too that, I mean, I sort of glossed over that may be worth mentioning. I mean, you want to make sure that the contractor has insurance regardless of the time of year or whatever they're doing. You want to make sure that you're making it clear that the contractor has to be up to date on their workplace safety insurance, if applicable, that sort of thing. And another good one to think about too is assignment of the contract. So is the contractor allowed to subcontract this without informing or getting the permission of the condo? I can actually picture some issues arising from that, not so much for physical liability, but payments, right? So somebody looking for their money, and you're like, "Who the hell are you?"
Right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
some other considerations.
Yeah, for sure. Proper payment structure in place that indicates when payments are going to be made and what the schedule is going to be for those payments, whether HST is included in that or whether it's above and beyond that. Yeah, and I mean, I've seen contract templates or contracts from other clients before where we've kind of come in and seen them for the first time, where there's actually HST is indicated that it's included in one aspect of the one area of the contract and then not included in another area of the contract. So those details, the details matter.
From our side of the coin, I actually struggle to think of things that are an issue in terms of liability and contract in summer. There are a couple things. One is the control of the work, I think is really important. It goes back to what Jerry was saying about what kind of mowers and how people are dressed and that sort of stuff. One of the issues that we've seen in recent years sort of crop up is an insistence after a contract has been signed that we do something in a way that the board specifies that is separate from how we would, as a good practice, do that. So a good example would be front lawns. Every condo owner wants their front lawn to be push mowed. Now, if you have 100 front lawns and you have to push mow them all, you got 3 guys on site, they're going to be dead by the end of the day. So we always say that we like to control the work and that we will, as a company, decide what the appropriate size mower is for that lawn. If you want something different, that can be discussed, but to push mow things takes a lot longer. So there is a time element that has to be added in. Mm-hmm. The only other sort of strange part of summer contracts that I ever really see is a notwithstanding clause. So sometimes when you get around to fall cleanup, leaf cleanup, you'll see a notwithstanding clause which will say something to the effect of the leaves will be cleaned up notwithstanding the end date of the contract, which means that we can push beyond October 31st until everything's fallen and until the snow starts. And as we, get further and further into climate change and everything else that's going on in Ottawa, those dates are the date before we get snow is getting further and further pushed back. It used to be we get some in November. Now it's December, later December. So in theory, with a notwithstanding clause in there, you could ask the contractor to continue to do leaf cleanup well after the end date of the contract. So that's something that whenever I see it, I cross it off, I initial it and say that I can't sign that. Because it's just no one's getting paid to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a question from Shelley CB. Hey, Shelley. Thanks for writing in. We appreciate it. Will you be discussing tree maintenance? When does the city have to issue permits for either removal or planting of trees? And if permits are required, will the contractor or manager attain that permit? Great questions, and does lead us into a discussion that we want to have about trees. So the answer is yes, we will be discussing trees, and we'll do that now. And when, Jeff, does the city have to issue a permit for removing a tree?
Generally, it's in legal terms, I think it's 20 centimeter. I think so. But however, it's generally always the city really doesn't want to remove trees at all. Mm-hmm. And we go through a lengthy process to get around to that. It usually takes anywhere from, I'd say, as quick as 2 weeks, but can be up to 6 weeks. Mm. And doesn't really matter if there's an emergency need to take that off or not. Well, I can think of condos last year where we requested, we went to them, we needed the permit, and as far as I know, we still haven't got that permit. So there will be a lot of resistance from the city, but trees are, we talked about this before, trees are somewhat problematic. It's great that everyone loves trees, don't get me wrong, but trees from a condo's perspective can be a huge liability, in terms of your foundation, your windows, just people walking down the street. So we often find, especially with well-established, mature condos that have been around for a number of years, that one of two things has happened. The trees are too big, they're planted too close to the building, or there's simply too many of them. So we're really putting a push on to say, you know what, maybe think about other things. Maybe think about smaller trees, fewer trees, or even something else like gardens.
Yeah. And, we can kind of look at a little bit of a case study in terms of an example. I used to manage a property, older townhome property, one of the first early properties in Ottawa, condominium properties, and a nice property and good-sized units. But the developer planted trees that would end up growing very large, oak trees, maple trees, in the front yards of these units. So, fast forward 30 years and you drive into the property and it looks amazing. Like it really does. There's nothing that can take the place of, how a property can look when it's well treed and it's beautiful. But did they ever start running into problems? It's an area where there's a lot of Leda clay in the soil, and so they'd have situations where the large tree would suck all the moisture out of the Leda clay, especially in a drought year. And we actually had a foundation collapse, and helical piles had to be installed, and $100,000 later. And really that resulted from not the fact that there was a tree there, but the fact that there was an inappropriate tree for that area and for that particular space. So what do corporations need to think about when it comes to the trees that, let's talk about the trees that already exist, because we're not here talking about what developers shouldn't do, although maybe we should at a future webinar. But talking about what condo corporations should do in terms of dealing with those kind of issues.
Right. Well, arborists, especially very good arborists, they have so much information, particularized special information about trees. And I didn't realize how much I didn't know about trees until I walked around with a good arborist once. And he was pointing to, that one doesn't belong in this ecosystem. That one was taken out of the pot too late. That one's not buried deep enough. Again, I think you want to get somebody like Jeff's company that knows trees very well and trust them to sort of do their craft here, right? Like there's a lot to trees. And so you want somebody professional, if you have a lot of trees and you intend on keeping them, to tell you what special needs each of those trees have. And I mean, I've had to cut down so many old, not personally, but arrange for it as a manager, so many old trees that were lovely that just were ignored in the hustle and bustle of life, right? So ideally, the corporation budgets for an arborist to do regular maintenance on these trees, just like anything else in life. I think because trees are often seen as so tough, we just kind of discount that they are indeed alive and need things, and often don't get along with like what they're planted next to and that sort of thing, right? So
as all living things have a tendency to do.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, that would be my advice: is again, find a contractor that you trust, make them demonstrate their knowledge on this stuff. I'm telling you, there's a lot.
I was going to add to that. I mean, they are definitely lost in the shuffle when it comes to general maintenance. And if you do regular maintenance on trees, you probably won't have any long-term problems. I mean, besides the ones where they're not, like you said, not planted properly, too close. But that's the other issue. When you have a lot of trees, you have a lot of you're going to eat up a lot of budget.
Mm.
They're very expensive. You know, you need to take down a tree. It could be anywhere $10,000-$15,000 depending on one single tree. That
Sure.
seems crazy.
Yeah.
But like I said, regular maintenance, you know, clean it up a little bit, cut out the dead wood, make sure that it has some moisture and some soil around it. Those are very important, simple things to do, simple preventative maintenance that you could do rather than wait too late, like Jerry said. And then next thing you know, you got to figure out how you're going to remove 15, 20 trees from a property, and how are you going to fit that into a budget? It doesn't.
You know, I think you can tell you got a good arborist too is, do you remember the Seinfeld episode where the mechanic wouldn't give Jerry his car back? You're not taking care of it. You're not changing it. Yeah, it's when you get an arborist on site and they're like, oh, who cut that branch?
Right. Yeah, because he loves the tree, man.
Yeah,
he
just loves it, right? Like he's gonna feel ownership over it.
Yeah.
I like to see that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had the same experience with you in doing a tour of a property with an arborist, and just, you know, the amount of information that was coming to me, I was amazed. And a lot of that was related to maintenance. You know, I think before that, when I thought of pruning, I would think of you're pruning away dead branches, or you're pruning away what might be like really problematic branches, and that's it. Well, that's not what pruning is all about. Pruning is about keeping the branches that are going to result in the tree being healthy and looking good.
And that leads to another important point, is that if you raise the canopy of a tree, if you ignore the tree, it's going to get bushy, it's going to be very shady, it's going to be dark, it's going to cause all sorts of problems in that sense. But if you raise the canopy, you might have beautiful grass, you'd be able to plant stuff under there, people can move into those areas, hang out in there, have a picnic, do whatever it is you want to do in your common area. But if you don't do those things and you just leave the tree there, it really reduces the amount of space that you have that is usable space. And it gets really muddy and mucky. The grass won't grow.
Garbage.
And then you come and you ask, hey, can you guys aerate this? And that's the problem, right? I mean, you've come sort of full circle on this. Whereas if you just lifted the canopy, thin the tree out a little bit, get rid of a few things here and there. But it does really go back to all the new builds that you see these days. And this is a different issue, like you said, but there is a tendency to overplant. So you have, you know, an area where it should only really have 1 or 2 trees, and now you suddenly have 30 trees in there. Well, you've just increased your liability 30 times. Right. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, yeah. One of the simple things that I remember that arborist bringing out to me was just looking at a tree and kind of showing me, okay, you see the way that these limbs are growing out and then up, right? Out and then up. And he said that, you know, healthy limb, good limb, healthy limb, good limb. And then one that was kind of growing out and straight or out and down. And he said, that's a problem. And that's a problem because that's a limb that's going to come down when you have an ice storm. So even from that standpoint, maintaining trees, using pruning to maintain trees helps to save those types of incidents happening. And the result can be the limb falling on something that you don't want it to fall on, or it can be just those limbs coming down and then a bunch of money having to be spent on cleanup.
Well, look, I mean, anytime we've had the storm, like the big storms, you know, I know for a fact that we spent the entire storm at one condo cleaning up, and it was like 3 weeks. You can imagine what the bill would have been for that. And again, it goes back to proper maintenance, making sure there's not too many trees, making sure they're properly planted as well. That will reduce the amount of liability that you have in the long run.
Yeah. So maintenance of trees from a pruning standpoint and from other standpoints as well, very important. But there will come a time when trees need to be removed in a certain area because they're problematic, because it was never the right tree for that area, and the cost can be high. And one of the problems that or issues that we've run into is, you know, we're talking about a emotional attachment to a tree, and it happens quite often, right? And people have you know, moved into a place, had kids, raised their families, and this tree's kind of grown with their family, right? And so you can understand that, and you know, maybe we've all experienced that if we've owned a property and had a tree there. So that's a bit of a battle sometimes that we have to fight, but the other important thing to think about, I think, is that when you remove a tree, it doesn't preclude you from planting a new one. And so from the standpoint of an emotional connection, maybe the idea is, the same as a pet. You've lost the dog.
Oh, we don't want to talk about that.
Okay, we won't go there.
I'm gonna have to cry into that cup there.
Oh no, is this have I opened a recent wound?
Yeah, it's
for you?
okay.
Oh, sorry.
Let's move on, Mark.
So trees, not pets, but trees are replaceable, and it's nice to go through that process and kind of start it over again and be able to.
But one thing to keep in mind, how you remove the tree is very important too. Oftentimes, a property manager or the board will come and say, "Well, just this tree has to go. Just cut it down, and then grind down the stump."
Mm-hmm.
What they don't realize is that if the tree's been there for 30 years, the root system on that tree is enormous.
For sure.
If it's not through your foundation, it's actually pretty surprising. So we can't just plop down another tree in that place. So if you really, truly want to put something right back in that spot, you're going to be spending a lot more money to get that tree out of there. You're going to have to dig out the root system. Right. And that, once we start talking excavation, that's very expensive.
And I guess there's the option of going with something, and doesn't necessarily have to be a tree, that has a shallower root system.
Absolutely.
That you could go with.
Yeah, for sure.
Stump grinding is typically done down 6 inches.
About that, yeah.
Below, yeah.
And that's one of the things we always try to encourage with condos is, think long term. Try and find whether it's trees, shrubs, or plants that are going to be later blooming, that are going to be drought tolerant, something that's going to give you more bang for your buck, right? I mean, and again, choosing appropriately is very important as well. Very often we'll get called to come and look at a garden that has, it's not working out, things dying off, nothing's taking root, literally. And the issue is always 9 times out of 10 that something has been planted there that is not designed for that space. And it's usually because the landscaper has not been involved in that process. Or maybe, like going back to the year after year contract changeover, maybe Joe Baloney came in and he decided in his company he was going to just plant whatever fit in the space, whatever he had left over in the greenhouse. Oh, it looks nice, it's pretty. But it could be something invasive. It could be something that doesn't exist here. So those are things to take into consideration.
Joe Baloney gets into a lot of different industries.
Yes,
that's what I found, and always problematic.
Yep.
Yeah. I did want to mention, I'd ask both of you to tell us a little bit about your companies and what you guys do. And I forgot to mention that the webinar today is being brought to you by the Condo Collective. And I just had something exciting happen, which was I finally got my hands on the condo directory for Ottawa. If I can find the original page here, the cover page, which I can't. Oh, I'm close.
You're looking for your ads right there.
Yeah, the ads there. Anyway, this is the condo directory, and we did put an advertisement in there, which we were happy about. And actually, it's been out for a while, but I only got my hands on it today for various reasons. And we are going to be attending and have sponsored the upcoming CCI Eastern Ontario Conference, which is happening in Kingston. So one in Kingston in May, and then the other one in Ottawa in the fall. But we're going to be there, and we've sponsored that. And I think, Gerry, you're going to be there as well.
I'm going to be there as well. Yep.
Yeah. What are you doing? Are you going to be informing us / entertaining us?
I hope I'll be entertaining. Yeah. So I'm actually part of the board of directors for CCI Eastern Ontario, and so I assist in organizing the legal panel in this case. And so we're going to have some great lawyers there doing a little bit of a mock trial, and I'll be participating part-time as moonlighting as a judge. So I think Nancy Houle and I are handing the baton off between cases.
Right.
I'm sure Nancy is, well, she's eminently more qualified to be a judge. So I'm going to have to, compete on the grounds of being entertaining. We'll see. But
do they give you guys a robe?
No, we didn't have one last time. Although I did manage to let them call me Judge Dredd. So
I remember that. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think you need a robe.
get a wig to go with it.
I did get a
The wig.
gavel for Nancy for last year's Kingston Pit.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The gavel is always useful, although I think Nancy's voice commands as much attention, if not more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But also, I think the gavel is more of an American affect. So I think maybe this year we'll turf that.
Well, we're looking forward to the conference anyway, and we're going to be excited to be there. And hey, did you guys know that this webinar was actually sponsored? Yeah. So today's webinar brought to you by trees. Trees, we have leaves. And brought to you secondly by grass. Grass, we carpet the world. We hope you like green. We hope to get better sponsors for next time. That's the only thing that we could come up with for this podcast.
It's good.
So
Very good.
we'll see. The money from those sponsorships is
You've been bought
on the
by
low
big
side.
grass, I see.
Big grass. Yeah, but the kind that grows in your backyard.
Yeah.
Although that's probably not really being specific enough if I'm trying to differentiate it from other types of grass. Yeah. Well, Jeff, we want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All of your expertise and your knowledge related to trees and related to landscaping. And from a practical standpoint, you know, what condo corporations need to do, what are some of the actual tasks and the techniques that are involved, but then from the contract standpoint as well. I think those points regarding specifications probably one of the most important things to come out of our discussion today. And Gerry, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best with your new endeavor, and positive that it'll be successful. And like I say, fills the gap that we need in the industry, but appreciate your experience and your knowledge as well. And not that anything today constitutes legal advice, we'll mention, but we do really appreciate the areas of the contract, especially that you're able to
Yeah, my pleasure. Mark, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been fun. So
yeah, it's been great. Well, hopefully it was fun enough that you'll both come back again. I'd love to do one in the fall when we're starting to make sure that winter maintenance contracts are in place. And we can talk about that. And there we can talk a lot more about liability. And
you might need 2 or 3 hours for that one.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have some opposing ideas about this too.
That might be a two-parter. Might be a two-parter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Opposing ideas are the best.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I love about having this format is that we're able to do that. And we don't always have to agree with one another. But we can still treat one another with respect and have understanding for where each party is coming from. You know, the nice thing about that is you have one party that's representing their interests or the interests of their client, right? And so there are going to be differences of opinion, and there are going to be different perspectives. That's the reality. So this is a great format and place for us to be able to share those. Thank you both for coming in. We hope everybody enjoyed today's webinar, and we'll look forward to having you back for the month of April. And stay tuned to find out who the panelists are going to be for that, and also what the topic is going to be. We'll be announcing that in the near future. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to John Dozois for providing us with IT service and hosting for us today. So we appreciate that. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.